I'd like to introduce Cindy Karsten. She's the Lazin Alive Outreach Veterinarian with the UC Davis Koret Shelter Medicine Program, where her role is to advise shelters, perform focused and comprehensive shelter consultations, and present at conferences and universities. She graduated from the University of Wisconsin School of Veterinary Medicine in 2010 and went on to complete a shelter medicine internship at Colorado State University. She finished her shelter medicine residency at UC Davis in 2014, not very long ago. Cindy's interests include infectious disease control, population management, and community international medicine. Is it internal or international? International, okay, that'll do. Cindy lives with her 5 shelter dogs, weights 7, 9, 10, 12, and 50 pounds, 1 stray cat, and an exceptionally supportive husband. Will you put your hands together, please, for Cynthia Karsten.
Hello, everyone. I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you yesterday in the workshop, but really so excited to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation, Nell. And if I haven't met you yet, I hope to meet you over the next couple of days because this is going to be very, very fun. It is my first time to Australia, so thank you. I plan to come back. Okay, so I realize I've broken like every rule of PowerPoints with my title, but I don't know how else to capture this idea of capacity for care. It is by far the most hopeful thing we could talk about in sheltering. And it's not fancy, it's accessible. It's accessible to everyone. It does not come with any compromises. It just comes with providing excellent care to everyone, to your animals, to your staff, and to your community. So, and the best part, it's way easier than we ever expected it to be. Is this my thing to move the slides? Okay. The one with like, oh, the giant one in the middle? Got it, okay. Okay, no jet lag here. Don't worry, no jet lag. We're good. So I hope everyone is really excited to be here, as excited as I am. But I want you guys, just for a minute, I want you to think back to your shelter, okay? This is pretty typical where I come from. I want you to think about what it feels like in your shelter. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like to be walking through? I'd like to introduce you to the rare California brown. Affectionately, I like to call them the domestic short hair small breed. In our shelters, sadly, it's kennel after kennel, row after row of these guys. Sadly, sometimes we close the door, create more space. Many times we have walls of cats, wall after wall, room after room. Not giving them what they need, not allowing them to be a cat. Now, I said this was hopeful. The reason it's hopeful is because your shelter doesn't have to be like this. This can be your shelter. I'm personally on a campaign to make sure every single animal has a zebra-printed blanket, where staff and volunteers can read to an animal, where they can be heard, where they can relax, where they can be who they want to be. Where every cat can be a cat and can stretch out, show who they really are. Maybe even get a window, and yes, a zebra print blanket. It's one of the most beautiful pictures I've ever taken in a shelter. Made me cry. And the reason it's beautiful is that it's empty. No one in their shelter had cat flu. And I know. We are in the southern hemisphere. We are approaching summer. Summer means kitten season. Summer means crowded shelters. But is this inevitable? Is cats getting sick inevitable in our shelters? I'm here to tell you no. And I'm here to tell you why. Because we looked at it. We thought of every single risk factor we could of why cats were getting sick in our shelters. Because not every shelter had cats getting sick. So there had to be something different. What was it that was different about the shelters where the cats weren't getting sick compared to the shelters where they were horribly ill? So, 49 things that we could come up with to ask shelters, what's going on, okay? Everything from intake to what your cages look like, to location of cats, to how long they stay, to air quality, to how much exposure they have to dogs. Everything we could think of that would affect how healthy a cat is in our care. This is what we found. We looked at 9 shelters, loads of cats, and loads of illness. But look at that. What was it? What was it about shelter 8? And it's not the fact they didn't have cats. Nice try. Everyone had cats. Everyone had a lot of cats. So what was it? After 49 things that we could have looked at in shelters, what was it? What was it that made a difference? Anyone? Both. Yes. Space. Giving a cat room. Making it so they don't have to poop in their bedroom or eat in their bathroom. That is what keeps cats healthy, and when we do that, we avoid crowding. We have half as many cats, and it is beautiful, and it keeps cats healthy. So from this, the guidelines for shelters, guidelines for standards of shelterable care in animal shelters, took that recommendation, having at least 9 square feet per cat, compartmentalized, and came up with a whole slew of other recommendations for shelters. So if you haven't read this document, please do. And the A made up a wonderful tool to help utilize this in every single shelter. But I would like to draw your attention to the mother of all standards. And that is every sheltering organization has a maximum capacity of care, and the population in their care must not exceed that level. Okay? Every single animal must be given humane housing. You must have the staff that's able to care for every single animal that is taken into the shelter. And every single one needs to have an outcome, an appropriate outcome for who that animal is. All right. This is our stool sample. So many times when we talk about what makes a shelter successful, we look at their live release rate, right? How often is it that we talk about an organization? The first question is, well, how many animals leave alive? But in that, in the shadow of someone's live release rate, is also euthanasia. But we have to realize that the outcomes that we give our animals are integrally linked to the intake, both the amount and the type. And it's also for the pathway, for the resources that we have to invest in every single animal. For a shelter to be successful, to have sustainable sheltering, okay, all 3 of these have to balance and they have to work together. This is what makes someone successful, when we balance our intake, our pathways, and our outcomes for every single animal that comes to us. Because we have to realize, and we have to realize honestly, every single shelter in every single community has a finite ability to rehome our animals in the amount of time that we're given. And all too often, that need far exceeds the capacity. And when we can realize this, when we can accept it, then we can start making conscious choices and setting our priorities. And that, let me tell you, can be really empowering. Because let me tell you, this stool will not work. So what do we mean by capacity for care? And Trish just mentioned this. Capacity for care is giving every single animal the 5 freedoms of animal welfare. Now, I really want to think about this, okay? Freedom from hunger and thirst is not merely providing fresh food and water every day. If every time a cat goes to the bathroom, they kick litter into their food, we have not met this freedom. If every time we feed a dog and he cannot eat because his kennel mate is keeping him from his bowl, care how much fresh food is given, we are not meeting this freedom. So, to meet 4 of our freedoms, it really does come down to space. You cannot provide the 5 freedoms without providing double compartment housing for every single animal in your shelter. It is not possible. And the longer they stay, the more they need. So, for those of you who've met me, you know my favorite thing about shelters are portals. Yep, any caged housing for cats can be made compartmentalized. I don't care what color the portal is. I don't care what shape the portal is. You just need a portal. They're popping up all over the United States and Canada. We're calling it Portal Mania. They can be side to side. They can be up and down. And we now sell them. You can go to sheltermedicine.com. Yes, I do work for them. Search Portal. You can find out how to purchase the ones that are prefabricated, or you can make your own. We have YouTube videos on how to put them in. So I would like to be able to come back at the next summit and say Portal Mania has hit Australia. Please make me proud. All right, but that only covers the first 4 freedoms, okay? There's a 5th. And that is freedom to express normal behaviors. And let me tell you, especially our cats and our dogs, they got a lot of things that they like to do. No matter how great your housing is, no matter how many portals you put in, this one is really hard to achieve in an animal shelter. We can do play groups, but I agree with Trish, we gotta get them out of the shelter. So this is where we talk about our length of stay. Because let me tell you, we can't have cats in the shelter doing this. All right. I also want to challenge you to a 6th freedom. The 5 freedoms for animal welfare were written by the Farm Welfare Council in the UK, where the outcome for those animals was known, right? No one was trying to rehome, RTO, adapt out the livestock, right? We knew what their outcome was. We, as sheltering professionals, we need to worry about outcomes for everyone. So I want to challenge you guys to a 6th freedom, or if you will, 5 freedoms plus 1. It just sounds better. And that is freedom from death for any animal who is not irremediably suffering or dangerous to the community. We do have a commitment to this freedom, to get them out. So, this to me captures the 5 freedoms beautifully. Now, think about it. No one in the shelter liked this cat. Why? Because he loved to destroy his kennel, or his cage, his housing unit. It had to be cleaned multiple times a day because he made it look like this. But staff didn't have time to deal with him. What would his outcome be, right? If you walked through your shelter, if you were doing your daily rounds and you saw this cat, what pathway do you think he's headed on? Likely to one of adoption? Would adopters see this animal in their house? Probably not. This animal is not being given the freedom to express who he really is. But when we give him room, when we give him a place to hide, yep, that is the same little dude. That guy you can see in your house. That guy you can see on your lap. By giving him what he needs, he can show us who he is. That is providing the 5 freedoms. This is a shelter I hold very near and dear to my heart. Bless them for all the challenges they give me. They knew that putting a cat in every single cage was way too many cats in their shelter, so what did they do? They removed the doors to keep their density down. Awesome, kudos to you, but guess what then they did? When they could recognize it, yep, they put in portals. Every cat now has a suite. And picture came to me this summer. Now the staff has time to be creative. They started making these beds. All this was donated. They're these round, weird pad things that they get. It's Vegas, whatever, I don't ask. And they put them in pillowcases, and they made hidey spots for every single cat in their care. Why? Because now they had time to meet the needs of their cats. So yeah, I am serious. But I don't want you to get nervous. I'm not here to make you nervous. I'm here to make you hopeful. Okay? When we talk about capacity, there's different kinds. There's our holding capacity, and there's our flow through. Okay? Now, we can increase our capacity. Sure, we can build a bigger shelter, but then we got to care for them, and we got to find their outcomes. Or we can simply move the same amount through faster. Which one do y'all think saves more lives? All right, I know you guys are hungry, but I'm going to challenge you to a little bit of math. Don't worry, it's simple. When we talk about capacity, at its very basis, now this is not capacity for care, this is merely capacity, okay? It's a simple algebra equation. It's who comes in times how long they stay. LOS, length of stay. Now, if you find that this capacity is above who you have humane housing units for, who you have the staff to care for, who you can give the 5 freedoms to, something has to change. What can change? We can decrease our intake. We can build a bigger shelter. Or, and this is where I challenge you, you can reduce how long everyone is with us. Now, think about a shelter that takes in 10 animals every single day. If we are efficient and we move them along to the outcome that they need to have in 5 days, that's only 50 animals in our care. Now, let's say we aren't so efficient. They now stay 10 days. Exact same intake, we're helping the exact same number of animals, but now our density is twice as large. If we really fall off the wagon and we really don't move them through quickly, they stay twice as long. Guess what? And let me tell you, we've helped the same number of animals, but these two shelters feel extremely different from the inside, both from a staffing standpoint and from the animal standpoint and from the adopter standpoint. So, guess what? Length of stay affects length of stay, okay? Many studies have come out to show that the biggest risk factor to an animal getting an infectious disease in a shelter is time. They stay long enough, they will get sick. Move them out, they stay healthy. They get sick, guess what? They stay longer, or they are not given the outcome that they should have had in the first place. However, if we can keep them healthy and we can move them through, I guarantee I will save you money, and I don't even expect a check. So, as a bonus, when we decrease our length of stay, when we give the animals the housing that they need, you save time. Double compartment housing is way easier to clean, and it's way better for disease transmission, disease exposure. Okay, so when our staff isn't spending time cleaning or medicating animals, they're able to move them along to adoption, they're able to help with adoptions, and again, we decrease our length of stay. So the bottom line, if you learn nothing else from me today, remember this. Half the number of housing units combined with half the length of stay, guess what? You have now just helped the exact same number of animals, and you've done it a heck of a lot better. So, how do we decrease our length of stay? Now, decrease makes a lot of people nervous. Never, ever would I ever intend to mean that decreasing length of stay means we hasten to euthanize. Never should euthanasia be used as a tool to reach your capacity for care. If that's what you find yourself doing, call me, we'll talk. We want to optimize our length of stay. We want to give every animal only the exact amount of time that they need to get the care they deserve and the outcome that is meant for them. So, we're going to talk about these things. I want you guys to get some tools to optimize your length of stay. So, when we talk about setting our capacity, and I talked about this yesterday, but now we're going to talk about the math more specifically. We already talked about how we provide humane housing units. How do we do it? Let me hear you. Portals, thank you very much. So not only do we need to know how many humane housing units we need to have in our shelter, or we can have in our shelter, we need to know how many animals should be there. One way to figure this out is to determine your adoption-driven capacity. It's very simple. Figure it out month by month. Do it by age if possible. Take however many adoptions happen in a month, divide it by 30, that's how many happen per day. Your target length of stay for an animal to be up for adoption is 7 to 14 days. Why do I pick 14? 14 is about the time a cat likes to get sick. Move them out. If your shelter is smaller, your adoptions are smaller, you will likely need a higher number, but we'll talk about that. So you take however many animals are adopted, you figure out how long you want them to be there, and that's how many animals you should have. Because what happens if we have more than that? What's the only thing that can go up if the number of adoptions don't? The length of stay, right? Simply putting more animals up for adoption does not guarantee that more will be adopted. Now, if I have just blown your mind, not to worry, we've made a calculator. Super handy, check it out. And if I really have blown your mind, not to worry, we've made a calculator for that as well. We're not going to go through this because that really would make you all hate me. But if anyone does want to use this, it's a really nice tool to use on a monthly basis to decide truly how many animals you should have in your shelter to be at your capacity for care. And I'm happy to work through this with anyone. Now, if you hate Excel spreadsheets, if you really do hate math, just remember, any amount of reduction in your population will inevitably decrease your length of stay. Okay? So you can make it really simple, just start reducing the number. So, another way to help us optimize our length of stay is we really do need to plan our intake, okay? When we are full, when we are beyond full, when we are not providing the 5 freedoms for everyone, we gotta start saying no. Or just not now. I need you to wait. And we have to do this because we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the animals in our care, not just the one that's being faced with us at the door, but the ones already in our care. It does not serve anyone for us to take in even one animal above that, which compromises the care of everyone there. And guess what? You know what the greatest length of stay is ever? 0. That's one we get to count, and that one we get to be proud of. If they never have to come in, that's beautiful. All right, now if they do come in, we got to move them through again as efficiently as possible. We need to optimize the time that they're with us and not give them any more time than they need. So we got to plan a pathway. Every single animal that comes in is unique and they are not all created as equal. As much as we love them all, the larger, dentally challenged cat is not going to be on the same pathway as a kitten, and we can't force them to be. They're very different, they need different things, and their outcomes will be the same, but likely in a longer pathway. So, from day one, we need to figure out what that animal needs and what their outcome is going to be, and we need to plan accordingly where they're going to be housed and how they're going to be housed. Can the pathway change? Absolutely, but start them on one and make sure they're moving towards the outcome that we want in the minimum amount of time possible. I cannot stress this enough. Every single organization needs to be doing daily population rounds. You have to know who's in your shelter. You have to know that the information that you know about them is accurate. You have to know that you're providing them with everything they need. This is how we remove bottlenecks. This is how we keep everyone moving to where they need to go. It's very simple. You ask 5 basic questions of every single animal every single day. By doing this, we can have very quick length of stays. We can get them back to their owner, we can get them out to rescue, we can get them to foster, we can get them on the adoption floor. Animals should wait for nothing. This is one of the best things we can do to optimize our length of stay. We can get them out to adoptive homes. I have been blown away by what some shelters try to do to get an animal adopted. We need to have good hours. It really is marketing. It really is. This is customer service. Every single adoption should be a conversation, not an interrogation. And what we have to remember is an adoption is not the end of a relationship, it's the beginning. If someone leaves our shelter without adopting an animal, guess what? That person is lost to us. And we haven't kept them from getting an animal, we've merely kept them getting an animal from us. That is a relationship that we're never going to get back. So let them go and be their support. How do we get started for all this? Because I know you guys can do this. Every single one of you can be within your capacity for care. To get the numbers down, I would never, ever suggest that you get there through euthanasia. You don't have to. You can do a giant event. In fact, there's one coming up on Saturday. It's the big adopt out. Awesome. Get them out, get your numbers down. Generally, this does not work as well in the summer. Staff is exhausted. We're buried under a giant mound of adorable kittens. So maybe try it at a time when it's a little bit slower. But once you get down and you work on always focusing on your length of stay, it naturally resets itself and you'll stay there. This is a great blog post that came on by Maddie's Fund, and it talks about decreasing length of stay and how that does not actually compromise welfare or decrease live release. In fact, it does the exact opposite. So I just want to talk to you about a few shelters who've taken the challenge. This is one of my favorite shelters. This was before they recognized their capacity. Cats in every single cage, dogs trying to get away from their comp specifics. Don't worry, he's not stuck. He's just being a fool. Cats not being afforded a place to hide, so they'll use whatever they have. That is a cat under a bed. When they recognized their capacity for care, they put in portals. They brought surgery back in-house. They started doing intake exams on cats in a space that is their old, one of their isolation rooms. They didn't need 2 rooms anymore because the cats weren't getting as sick, and every single cat had a hiding spot. Yes, I have an affliction for small dogs. They love portals too. Only 1 dog with kennel cough. Half as many animals in the shelter. Morale seems to be up right now because we have more awesome cards. This is another shelter that I've had the pleasure to work with. How many of you can honestly say we have been doing amazing? You can. You too can say this. You too will send me these emails, please. This will make you smile. We're getting portals for all of our cat cages. Wow. I ran the data. Last year, our live release was 62%. This year, it's 92%. So not only did they save more animals, they did it with better care. And look at that, I saved them a whopping $60,000. Yes, they did. I find this I want to share the numbers with everyone who will listen, but the previous year's numbers are humiliating. Never, ever be afraid to share what you accomplish. Because 62% isn't bad. They worked really hard to get there, but look at that, they got themselves up to 92%. Just wanted to let you know how things are going. We've maintained C4C over the summer. We're actually below it. We've been able to reach out to other shelters, and this is a direct result of the initiatives we began for C4C. To me, this is one of the most beautiful statements anyone can say to me in animal sheltering. I'm really enjoying the summer. We do not have to hate summer, guys. We too can love it. This was a shelter I worked with and adore. They slipped. They were in their capacity for care and they slipped. Life happens. We have things thrown at us that we cannot anticipate. But then the animals started getting sick. We had more diarrhea. We had more flu. The energy in the shelter was of slight panic, just with the twins are running around like a chicken with their heads cut off. And it felt like old times. It was not good. I look back on it and think, how did we ever do it? And the fact was, we didn't. Every day was stressful. Every day cats were being euthanized. Every day staff was left exhausted. Without a doubt, hands down, Capacity for Care is the best program that has ever happened to this shelter. Yep, that's that shelter. They got back on track. They adopted out more animals than even came in that month. And they celebrate it. They keep track of their stats every day in the break room so they can celebrate as a team what they've accomplished. So find your capacity for care, get there, stay there. I guarantee you will see less illness. You will have faster adoptions. Your length of stay will be shorter. I'm going to save you money. You're going to have more resources to do exactly what we've come here to do, to reach out to our community. And guess what? Then you're going to have less animals needing sheltering in the first place. So you get to repeat again and again to help more animals and do it better. So, 5 simple steps. Step 1, you all have already done that one. Work with an incredible organization. Then, start doing some math. How many humane housing units do you have? How many adoptions happen? What is your ideal length of stay? Plan how you're going to get there. Talk about your intake. Talk about your length of stay. Start doing rounds. Move animals through efficiently. Then do it. Put in the portals. Give every animal the space they deserve, the space they need to be who they are. If you do not have enough, make it bigger, hire more staff. If that is not an option, back to step 3. Something has to change. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Cindy. If you'd like to take a seat, we've got our roving mics for your questions. Fascinating, both of those presentations. Lady over here. This will keep you fit. Right the way back over there. That's great. Thank you.
Hi. Looks like a terrific model. I just wanted to understand a little bit better how that model, that looks great within the shelter setting, can actually reduce the number of animals coming in. If you're controlling the number of animals that you take, what happens to the animals that are out there that aren't coming in, that are less than normal, and how does it stop that demand? I'm not quite sure I see that link.
Is this on? So, how does, if I just get your question right, so how does decreasing our intake actually create less animals out in the community that need help?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So, we're going to talk all about this tomorrow. No, Friday. We're going to be talking about managed intake and alternatives to intake. But it really becomes a point of there are many animals we can help in our community by not sheltering them. Okay, Pets for Life is an amazing example of it. So many times people think that coming into the shelter is the only option for their animal, when really we can offer other services to help the animals stay where they are. And again, if we bring in animals above what our capacity for care is, we've actually not provided a service to anyone, to the cat, to the owner, or the animal's already, to the animal coming in, to their owner, or the animal's already in our shelter. Does that?
Yeah, I suppose, but that's quite an expensive program to operate, to have all of that.
It doesn't always have to be, but yes, it is an investment. But taking in more animals than we can care for is also really expensive.
I know, I totally agree with the model that you've described. I think it's great. I'm just worried about the animals that are out there not being addressed. That's all.
Not what, sorry?
Not just being left there. I'm worried about the animals that are still out there breeding if you're not taking in as many.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
We will talk all about it on Friday, I promise. Every single one of your questions will be answered.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Is everyone just hungry? Is that? Or do we just answer every single one of your burning questions?
Here's someone. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, I just had a small question. You had one of your last slides was about pre-adoption length of stay and adoption length of stay. I didn't understand that. Is that before an animal's ready for adoption? Or?
Yes,
right.
sorry. Yes, so a lot of shelters break it up, but you don't have to, and we can talk about that too, but a lot of that would be like the time it takes to get them surgery, if they need any medical care, So that would be considered that, and then yes, then their time up for adoption. But a goal for a shelter should be on average 14 days to cover that whole bit. And a lot of shelters do find it very helpful, especially when the holding time is longer, that even during their holding, they're still up to be seen for adoption, so that someone could see them and choose them. And so then when their holding time is up, they can just go home. That's an amazing way to shorten length of stay, instead of waiting all the time in the back where no one can see them, and then having to add that time on the adoption floor.
Yes, I saw that. I spent some time at Front Street Shelter in Sacramento, and I saw they were doing that.
Fun!
Yes.
That's my hometown. Well, currently, it's not actually. Anyway, sorry.
Yes. Over here. Behind you. It's coming.
The one thing that I have a little bit of problem about with the cats in cages is that they don't have time to play. They deserve enrichment just like doggy play groups. They deserve to climb and play. And in those double cages, I don't see any group areas or even two cat areas where there is space to play. What do you do?
Agree with you. Absolutely, cats should play. Cats should do a heck of a lot of things, which is why cats shouldn't be in the shelter in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I do like group housing, but I don't know if I didn't point it out here today, but if we are going to group house, then the space per cat doubles, and you need 18
Yes.
square feet per cat.
Yeah.
And we really don't like groups bigger than 3 to 4 cats. But ideally, a lot of cats shouldn't be in the shelter long enough to need all of that, right?
Yeah.
So that should be reserved for the ones that are going to be there longer. And absolutely, I'm a huge, I love play groups, and cats should have out-of-cage time as well.
Yeah.
So I was trying really hard to stay in my 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But certainly, to me, enrichment is not an option, and in the standards of care, it actually is given the same importance as feeding animals.
Yeah.
Is providing enrichment. It's not a bonus, it's a need. So certainly, if cats are in caged housing, that need for enrichment you can have play inside the cage, but certainly out of cage time is very important as well.
Because I found that one of the things, I run a shelter, but I have them in groups of 10 and 20 actually, but they've all had both sets of injections. So my length of time in stay before adoption is 1 month before they're adoptable, and that gives me time to both sets of, these are cats I'm talking about, not dogs, both sets of injections and times to incubate.
We should talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Okay.
I do 1 month, not 14 days, and I haven't quite worked that one yet.
Okay, you catch me
Yeah.
outside.
But I do have play groups. So
Any further questions? Yes?
Hi, this is a question for Trish. Trish, what is your... I didn't want to leave you up there on your own without asking a question. What is your view? We rotate all of our dogs around in exercise yards, and currently we would put 2 together, buddy them up, obviously take care in which dogs are buddied up. We don't currently do the play group where there's more than 2 because we have incidences of dog fights. What is your recommendation for how many dogs? First of all, would you recommend it's really valuable for the dogs to do exercise yard time without supervision once they're buddied up, that they just have exercise time? What value do you see in that?
You probably need to get Amy out here to do the full program, because I've seen her have a whole bunch of dogs, 20 dogs in a run, and they're all getting along, but they are supervised. I think the reason you're probably getting the fights is that the dogs are unsupervised. They may have a resource, there may be a precipitating event. If Amy does a lot of the stuff with volunteers. If you can get more volunteers, if you can get trainers to learn how to teach volunteers the body language, to know when to interrupt, to know which dogs are appropriate, then you can get the same number of dogs out, the same amount of time, maybe have bigger groups, have more interaction, but it's probably the unsupervised portion that's leading to the fights. So I would really hope that there would be a way get more people in there to supervise and help out. And it also helps, there's no better way to know the dogs. If they're just out there playing and you're cleaning, you don't know what that dog's like. But if there's a volunteer who's watching, and like our buddy Lennox, when we took him out, he'd never been in a play group. The staff thought he was kind of a tough dog to adopt out, but when they saw him play, there were just cheers and tears, and suddenly everybody on the staff who was watching the playgroup session knew what an awesome dog he was going to be. So those folks were able to go and talk to people at the adoptions desk, and, oh, you have another dog? Let me get this guy from the back for you. He's not so great in the kennel. So the advantage is to supervise play if you can get some eyes on the dog and get somebody who can write that down. He likes playing with smaller dogs. He likes playing with opposite sex dogs. It'll help you make that match and decrease length of stay.
Great answer. Over there, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Just a small question. With the larger play groups, more than 2, etc., are any of them undesexed, or are they all spayed and neutered?
My friend Allie, who came out and helped run the playgroup session, had worked at Animal Care and Control in New York City, where they do not desex the dogs until they are adopted. So she had some pretty big playgroups in pretty small spaces with intact animals. She did pay special attention to females in season, but she did have multiple dogs out who are not desexed. But the key is, if they're not appropriate for the playgroup, they go somewhere else. In that big shot of Indianapolis, you could see there were some dogs who were all by themselves in runs. They were not appropriate for playgroup, or were not ready for it yet. But it can, I've seen it work even if they're not desexed. But take it slowly, start with the easy ones, work your way up, and have people around who can watch and monitor.
I was just wondering, what do you think the staff in the play groups, what the staff or volunteer to dog ratio should be, generally?
All right, everybody who was at my session yesterday, what's my answer going to be?
Depends.
You weren't even there, and you
I
knew.
know.
Totally depends. It totally depends. My friend Allie can manage many, many dogs in multiple play groups in different yards by herself. She knows the dogs well. She knows how to match them up. If you are first starting out, I would say have a higher number of staff to dogs, and as you get to know them, this is the best way to get to know the dogs in your care, and you get to know their play styles and who will match up. I would not want to be out there by myself ever. You do need at least 2 to break up a fight, but they had an air horn at the Manhattan shelter, and when they needed extra hands, she would blow the air. If they heard the air horn, all hands on deck, they'd come out and help. But start slow, start easy, start with more staff and volunteers than you think you need, so that they will be successful and management will like it and dogs will get out faster.
Very good. Over here, I think this is probably going to be the last one.
Thank you. It's a really quick one. How often do you use the air horn?
All right, everybody who is in my class. It depends. I don't think it happened very often with that shelter. It was one of the toughest shelters. I had done some consulting with them earlier in earlier years. The dogs coming into the Manhattan shelter were some of the toughest dogs I've ever seen. And Allie had some amazing stats on her play group of thousands and thousands of individual rotations through play group. It was, I think, 24 incidents over the year, and an incident is anything that draws blood. It's not necessarily a large gaping wound, but the number was very, very small, but the key was in the training and in the selection and having somebody interrupt and have appropriate dogs in there. I think that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? We have got a little bit more time. Yes, thank you.
Part of the role of the shelter that I work at is getting the dogs and cats and other animals out to rescue groups. Now, my concern with some of the dogs and cats that we do have, and it probably goes for both, is length of stay. Because, you know, there are sometimes those dogs which you're trying to get out, or cats that you're trying to get out to rescue, and there's nowhere for them. How do you manage that length of stay with a dog that can't really go into adoptions, or a cat that can't really go into adoptions and really needs some really supportive care in a rescue group?
That's when we have to make our tough decisions, because I mean, that's when we have to look at quality of life, right? Simply holding them longer, is that going to change them or what their outcome is going to be? I mean, it's a sad reality. We have limitations. And again, that is what we need to recognize and what we need to accept. And when you can be within your capacity for care, hopefully you'll have less of those, so you can, and then the whole idea is if they're easy to adopt, and then they shouldn't be there very long, so hopefully you can give the other ones a bit of time, but even just more time, a lot of times it can just lead to decline. So we have to think about it from the animal's perspective as well. I've been in way too many shelters where there are cats that they're trying to make into pets. The cat doesn't want to be a pet, and we have to recognize those as well. So are there other options, which we'll talk about tomorrow? But those are our tough decisions, and everything we're working towards should be so that we have fewer and fewer of those to make. So it's not an easy answer, I'm sorry.
Anything to add? With my shelter, it was the 30-day mark where we started gearing up. If an animal had been with us 30 days, we would get together and look at all the different pathways that we had. And we were lucky to have a shelter with a lot of resources. So whether it is get them out for a weekend into foster care, you may find out they are not a pet in that weekend. You may find out something that allows them to become a pet. You may find out that dog who is presenting poorly in the shelter is perfectly house trained or likes cats, or that little snippet of information. And we were also able to utilize trainers, get the dog into board and train, and sometimes the trainer would come back with, this dog is not a pet, and then we have external confirmation, and that makes those tough decisions a little bit easier.
And I have something else to add. I saw something else. Start planning early as well. I've been in a number of shelters where the rescue group isn't even notified until there's a risk of euthanasia, you know? So the rescue groups pull off the euthanasia list. Day one, right? Start planning what their pathway is going to be. If there's any inclination that rescue would be best, or maybe rescue can take anything, you know? So just the earlier we can start it in the animal stay, the better off it is for everyone.
Okay, any more questions?